Hello everyone and welcome back to RubberStamps.com. Today we are going to be doing another practice prompt. Today's lesson is going to be about ink blending. But before we get started, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our content and so that you can stay up to date on all of our practice prompts. So the first thing that I want to go over is your supplies when it comes to ink blending. You can use many different kinds of inks for this, but we are going to be using archival ink. We're going to be using a few different colors today, but we're going to start with vibrant fuchsia and chrome yellow. The next thing that you're going to need is a Ranger blending brush. So they come in two parts. One is this wooden piece right here, both in circles and in this rectangular shape as well. So you have the wooden handle, and then you also get these foam feet that stick on the end like that. I have already used all three of these, but one thing I want to mention is that these are okay to reuse as long as they are dry. So right now these have had plenty of time to dry out, so there's no color coming off when I rub my finger across this, or if I were to rub it on the paper. However, if I were to use this with the yellow and then right away go and use it with another color and it's still wet, then that's when you're going to have problems with muddy colors. It's not going to blend properly, so you can reuse these, but just make sure that they have time to dry in between each use. The other thing that we will get to is using these small detail blending brushes, and we will do that later in this video. So with that, let's get started. So when you are blending inks, one tip that I like to mention right away is when you have your cardstock, it's really helpful to use this tape glue runner. Just put a little dab on the back of the cardstock. You can do one or multiple. Flip it over and then just tape it down to your work surface so that as you're blending across this paper, it doesn't move, it stays in place. And that's just a really easy tip that I like to mention before we start. So the first type of blending that we're going to be doing is using this circle brush, and we are going to do a circular gradient background with two colors. So to start, we're going to use vibrant fuchsia. So you can see my ink pad, and then you take the blending brush and you just rub back and forth across the ink pad to make sure that you're getting lots of ink onto the blending brush. You want it to be nice and saturated. You can dab it too, but I've found that just rubbing it across is the best way to get ink onto your blending brush. You can set that aside and then take your blending brush and just start lightly shading in a circular motion from the center of the page. And you're going to want it to be darker in the center, and as you go out, let the colors get lighter and lighter. Even it out on this side so it's nice and circular. A little bit more pressure if you want to make the color darker. You can also go back in again if you want to make the color darker, but I think I'm happy with how that looks. So now, because I don't want to mix the colors on the brush, I'm going to take off this pink and replace it with this yellow one that I've already used, but again, it's dry, so it doesn't matter. And then I'm going to grab the yellow ink, do the same thing, making sure that the blending brush is getting nice and saturated. And then you're just going to kind of pick up where you left off. It's okay if this color is overlapping because we're actually wanting to have some gradient where the colors are going to mix. And you just lightly continue going in a circle, or you can start on one corner and repeat that on each side. Because this is a lighter yellow, I'm going to want to go back in a few times and pick up some more ink onto the blending brush. Now that we have all of the corners yellow, we're going to start blending in with the pink. Alright, and you can see that we have yellow on the edges, and pink right in the center. I made sure not to overlap any of the yellow and the pink right in the middle. But then right in this middle section, you can see how the colors blended together to create a gradient of yellow to orange to pink. The next thing that we're going to do is practice a top-down gradient, and so I'm just going to swap out this yellow for aquamarine. And for this one, I'm actually going to be using the rectangular brush. You could do the same thing with the round brush, but I just kind of want to show you the difference in how the round brush with this will look compared to this rectangular brush. So to get started, I'm just going to again take my paper, do a few dots on the back, and tape it down to make sure that it's secure. And now we're going to start with the aquamarine and take the rectangular brush and do the same thing, making sure that you get the blending brush saturated with the ink. Now that we have it saturated, we're going to start at the top of the paper and just kind of go back and forth with this rectangular brush. You can also go, up and down like this. There's a few different ways you can do it. You can see that there are some lines that are developing, so you're just going to want to make sure you keep blending to get rid of those. You can also use this circular motion. I'm going to pick up some more ink with the blending brush and continue to blend down the page. If you wanted to, you could leave this as is. I think this actually is a really cool look, going from the dark blue all the way to the light blue to the white. But what I'm going to show you today is blending this with our pink. And we will use our pink. Make sure that you're getting it saturated so you get enough color on the brush. And now we're going to start from the bottom, moving upwards. And actually what I'm going to do is flip this over. I think it's just easier for me to work top down. So we're going to switch sides, get that in place. And I just think it's easier for me to blend from the top down. Alright, and here are the results of blending the pink and the blue. And what I think is just super cool is how this purple shows up in the middle right here. So it's almost like you used 3 different colors of ink, but really we're just using 2. And so I love how this turned out. I think this could be a really pretty like sunset scene, horizon scene. I don't know, there's a lot you could do with this. And I think that this just kind of shows the difference between using the round brush and the rectangular brush. This one does have a little bit more lines back and forth, but I think that that look is useful for some situations. So just keep in mind when you're selecting which kind of brush that you are going to get different looks with each one. So one thing you want to be careful about when you're blending colors is that you avoid making muddy colors, browns, yellows, when that's not what you're trying to do. So if you think about color theory, we know that primary colors, when you mix all of them together, end up making brown. So here we have pink, yellow, and blue, and you can kind of see in the middle here, that's just not a very pretty color. It's kind of brown and muddy and probably not something that we're going to be looking for in most of our crafts. So I just wanted to touch on that. Be aware of the colors that you are blending together, because some of them are not going to look great together. Alright, and the next thing that I want to go over is using the smaller detail blending brush. So these are really nice because you're able to get into smaller little spaces and do blending. So these are the stamps that I'm going to be using today. And I've already used my Cricut to cut out some of the shapes. These are the ones that I'm going to be blending with today. So we're going to be using this, and let's get started. So the first thing that you want to do with these is flip it over, and again we're going to use the tape glue runner. Just put a little dab on the back and tape that to your work surface just so that it doesn't move around. I think it's going to need more than one actually. Just a couple. There we go, and then tape that down to the surface. And one of the reasons that you don't want to use this bigger brush is because you can just see how small the details are that we're working with. This is going to just be a lot easier to blend on this small surface. So we're going to start with yellow. So you're going to be using the same strategy, just blending with the yellow. And then you're going to take a blending brush and just start blending. You don't want to push too hard with this one because it's just a lot harder to get the smooth gradient, so push pretty lightly when you're doing this one. I'm just going to start from this point where you do push a little bit darker, a little bit harder, and slowly blend outwards. Then we're going to flip sides, and we're going to go in with this coastal coral. Again, blending, getting ink on your blending brush, and then we're going to start from the back, moving up. So I'm just going to flip this over, take it down, start back here. You can also do these kind of flicking motions. You don't have to move in a circle. I think for this, because it is a smaller surface, it's kind of helping to just do these light flicks. And then the last thing I'm going to do is actually go in with some white pigment ink, just to kind of highlight where this star is going to be. So I have a fresh tip on here. I'll just get some white pigment ink on here. And then just very lightly highlight where that star is going to be. And then the final step is going to be stamping with our black ink. So you'll just want to make sure that this is lined up and stamp right over the top of your blended inks. So here's a nice close-up of this shape. You can just see how using this smaller detail brush allows you to blend with these smaller surfaces. For some of the smaller shapes, it is actually beneficial to use this bigger brush because we're just doing one color across the entire surface. This actually saves a lot of time. If you wanted to just do one single color, you can just blend the yellow right on there and then stamp over the top. Instead of using the stamp and then coloring it in with a marker, this is just a lot faster to get this completely covered with one color. You could also then go back in with the detail brush and maybe add a little bit more detail in the center or around the edges. It's really up to you. But I just wanted to show you that using this for one color actually does speed up the process quite a bit. Alright, and here we have a finished example. You can see that we have our detail blending with this comet. I also did the same thing with this little planet. We have the gradient of this background. I used a few different colors to make that blue and purple kind of combine. I also took some white paint and splattered that on, stamped some additional embellishments, and so this is just an example of something that you could make using these different shading techniques. And again, the ones that we learned today were using detail, creating a gradient from the top down or side to side, and also from the center out in a circular motion. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our content and you can stay up to date on all of our practice prompts. Thanks for watching.